And everybody, welcome to the Best Practice Network webinar series, Going Global, Top Considerations for Global Employee Volunteering and Pro Bono Engagement. My name is Lauren Wagner, and I'm the Senior Manager of Engagement here at VolunteerMatch, and I'm just going to be helping to facilitate things this morning. So before we get started, I wanted to go through our usual housekeeping items. So we're going to hold some time at the end of the session to pose questions to the presenters, and as an attendee, you can actually submit those to us throughout this morning's presentation. So the first way is by typing the questions into the box on the right-hand side of your screen, where we just tested the audio. And the second way is to submit them through Twitter by tweeting it to @VM_solutions using the hashtag VMBPN. And so we're just going to kind of compile those as we go through this morning and pose them, as many as we can get through, to the presenters at the end. Also, just so everybody on the call knows, we are going to be sharing a copy of the slides as well as a link to the recorded session afterwards. So don't worry, you're going to be getting all of this information after the session this morning. So going global, so we're going to be talking this morning about everything on the global side of employee volunteering and engagement programs, and we're going to be hearing from a few different perspectives and speakers on the topic. So first we're going to hear from Daniel Elliot of PYXERA Global. And for those of you who aren't familiar with PYXERA Global, they're a leading consulting firm that works with some of the world's largest companies to help them create sustainable opportunities for engagement internationally. Daniel's really going to be diving into international pro bono engagement and highlighting a few of the programs that they've consulted on with companies including IBM, Merck, and Dow. We're also going to be hearing from Vicky, who is the Vice President of Engagement and Strategic Partnerships here at VolunteerMatch. And Vicky's going to be sharing with us some of the trends that we've been seeing both in our own research here at VolunteerMatch as well as in some external studies. So as I mentioned, with PYXERA Global and their work with IBM, Merck, and Dow, we're actually very lucky to have Michelle Langley from Dow joining us on the call as well. Michelle manages the Dow Sustainability Corps, and she's going to be talking with us this morning about how Dow manages their international engagement programs. So after we talk a little bit about those trends and see some examples in action, we'll really kind of bring it all back together and highlight what those top considerations are that you should take into account when you're expanding any of your employee engagement programs internationally. So without further ado, we have lots to get through this morning, so I'll quit talking and hand things over to Daniel to get us started. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, Lauren, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. As Lauren mentioned, my name is Daniel Elliot, and I'm a key client manager at PYXERA Global. We used to be called CDC Development Solutions, so some of you might be familiar with our old name. We went through a rebrand last year and are now known as PYXERA Global. And we're a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. that focus on working with the private sector in engagements throughout the world with public sector and third sector parties to enrich lives and livelihoods worldwide, inclusively and sustainably. That's our simple goal, as stated. We have over 25 years of experience in these types of programs. We've done work in about 90 different countries, and each year we tend to add about one or two more. You know, one of the main focuses that we have is this global pro bono programs, as Laura mentioned. If you can move to the next slide. So we have a couple departments that PYXERA Global has to engage the private sector, and our largest is Global Pro Bono, which is our international corporate volunteer programs. We've been running these types of programs with private sector companies for about 7 years. Starting in 2008, we've placed over 1,000 volunteers in the field with over 600 local organizations that have been hosts to these volunteers in over 25 countries, and partnered up with 18 different corporate partners. Dow and Michelle being one of our big partners in these programs. And during my presentation here, we'll be diving a little in depth into some of the specific programs we run, so you guys can get an idea of what does a global pro bono program look like and the different variations that they have, and then also talking about when you think strategically and how to position your program if you're looking to launch one. we're here to assist in thinking through those aspects.
Great, thank you, Daniel, for the introduction. Real quick reminder to all of the presenters on the call, if you can make sure that your lines are muted when you're not speaking. We're hearing a little bit of background noise. Thank you. All right. Vicky, why don't you give us a quick introduction?
Sure. Hi, everyone. We're really excited about this conversation and wanted to give just a little bit of background on who VolunteerMatch is if you're not familiar. We are the web's largest volunteer engagement network, and we work to strengthen communities by connecting great people to great causes. What you're looking at right now is just a snapshot of our most recent annual report. We don't have our 2013 one out yet, but it gives you just an idea of the types of activity that take place within our network. So to date, we actually have about 96,000 nonprofits, and we're always looking at the number of members and what kind of activity we're seeing posted through VolunteerMatch.org. Next slide. And I think one thing that makes VolunteerMatch very unique is our work with corporations. So we work with over 150 companies who are, for the most part, engaging their employees. There are a handful that are also engaging their consumers. And they're tapping into VolunteerMatch Network, where there's sort of this organic listing of active volunteer opportunities that their employees or their consumers can get involved with. But we also provide additional tracking tools for tracking all that activity. But it's not just about the tools. It's really about making sure that we're a resource. That's why we hold these best practice calls, why the folks who are working with the companies who are our partners are really sharing a lot of strategic ideas around their engagement program. And of course, more and more as the companies we work with are multinational and are starting to explore how their programs look globally, we're starting to also explore how VolunteerMatch looks globally and on a global scale, both with our network and our specific tools. Next slide. So I really wanted to just sort of set the scene for everyone around the landscape on global employee engagement. And so what I'm going to do is show you a couple of bits of data that we have both from some VolunteerMatch surveys of our corporate clients and also from an additional bit of information for you to just be thinking about in the context of how the scene looked for global employee engagement. So we did this survey back in fall of 2012. And a lot of the conversations that corporate employee engagement managers are having are around skilled and pro bono volunteering and sort of moving away from that just offering traditional volunteering. But what's interesting is we still see that the large majority of volunteering that's taking place at companies is traditional. So you can see 83% is still that traditional volunteering, but there is a growth happening within skilled volunteering. That's that other larger slice of the pie, the 13%. So in the context of this conversation, companies are starting to move away from just offering traditional volunteering, things, the creek cleanup and team building and those sorts of things, and wanting to use their employees' skills in new ways. Next slide. So, what does that mean with regard to where employees are located? So, our clientele right now is headquartered in the U.S. But obviously they have a lot of offices in different regions around the world, and what we found is quite a good number are offering their employee programs and an employee volunteering program to their international employees. It's not just specific to headquarters or U.S. only. Next slide. It sounds like there's a little bit of feedback still. Could folks make sure that they're muted for the speakers? Thanks. So, taking it one step further, we also asked our clients, when it comes to recognition and the incentives that you offer with regard to your employee engagement program, how does that look with specific employee subsets? So, of course, the majority are offering, the full array of their program to full-time employees. But more and more are offering a lot of those same incentives and recognition to their international employees. You can see that's the third bar graph from the top, 21%. So it's just nice to kind of keep in mind how things are starting to look as companies are really making sure that their programs are integrated to employees all over the world. Next slide. And I think what's telling is that the information that we found about a year and a half ago is aligned with what CECP also found in their Giving in Numbers 2013 edition. And I know there's a couple folks from CECP on the line, so shout out to you all, and definitely jump in the chat window if you've got anything to add. But I pulled this specific graph because it sort of lays the foundation for folks on the line to be thinking about the various components of your volunteering program and how that looks when it comes to just offering it domestically, just offering it internationally, or how you work with a workforce that's all around the world. So in particular, you can see that the Employee Volunteer Awards, the flexible scheduling, and the company-wide day of service, the folks who are offering it domestically and internationally, it's starting to align. So you can see where the most popular components are really starting to take shape. Next slide. And also, I think it's worthwhile giving the Giving in Numbers report a read. It's a really good baseline of just giving in general, a lot of information on philanthropy, matching gifts, those sorts of things, and also some good information on employee engagement. And I think what's most interesting is what they found was that non-cash giving is really on the rise. Non-cash giving, typically can be product donations. So think, pharmaceutical companies, of course, are giving away medicine and those sorts of things. But the next sort of largest growing area in that non-cash giving is pro bono and skilled services. So, CEOs and senior management and C-suite folks are starting to pay attention to how they can engage all the assets of their company in philanthropy, including employee engagement. Next slide. So with that, I wanted to just lay some groundwork for what we're seeing sort of on a global scale and how companies are integrating their international workforce into their programs. Key considerations really around how to scale globally or how to sort of refresh your program globally. It's sort of becoming that it's not really an option to consider whether to only offer your program to just your headquarters employees or to everyone around the world. Companies are really starting to think strategically about integrating their entire employee engagement strategy and making sure that it's available to all of their employees. Certainly, the regional and cultural perspective is going to come into play, particularly with employee engagement and volunteering. And wherever you are in the world, there's different views of volunteering, what it is, how it's supported, what the government infrastructure is. But from a corporate perspective, folks are interested in seeing how they can get their employees to feel part of something bigger. Flexibility, of course, you're not going to be able to just transfer everything that's working in the U.S. To other offices. So leaving some room for flexibility is really important. Making sure you're paying attention to key relationships, whether that's employee champions who are really going to help motivate others to get involved and who are going to give you really good information about where you should be getting involved, and then also those strategic partnerships for charities and nonprofits in those different locations who can be most helpful and integrated into your program and make sure that it's really aligned with your program goals and your business objectives. And then, I think the other piece is thinking about that skills-based and pro bono opportunity abroad and for your employees abroad. So the folks from PYXERA and Dow are going to be talking a little bit about what's called ICV, or International Corporate Volunteerism. Daniel mentioned it some. And I think what's really interesting about it is because it's so immersive in nature, you've got folks who are going to a specific area for 2 to 3 months at a time and really getting to know the culture and the partners and those sorts of things. You can learn, sort of in a petri dish, what are the sort of those key considerations and help to apply it to your global program in general. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Daniel, and then we'll jump back in towards the end to wrap things up.
Great, thanks. So thinking about pro bono programs, especially in an international context, one of the things that we guide our clients to think right off the bat is how do you align it with the larger strategy of your organization? Instead of going rogue and just doing something for the heck of it, or that is not a part of the rest of the corporate culture. How do you align it? And one of the ways to do that is, all right, think about it with the business objectives in mind. When you're trying to sell a program like this to your executive leadership, if you can tie it to business objectives, it makes it for a really powerful case for doing these types of programs. And the three pillars of that are here on this slide, and you can see is employee engagement, innovation, and brand. One of the most rewarding parts of my job is when I get the feedback reports from employees that have done engagements like this and say, this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I didn't think that my perspective on so many issues would change, and I'd be profoundly moved by this experience and motivated, to come back and work and really, make a change in how I approach my work, and also to employee satisfaction. Not only with what they just did, but then also the gratefulness that they show to their employer for investing in the time, energy, resources necessary to get a program like this off the ground. So that employee development, retention, recruitment is a very important aspect of this. Coupled with that is the innovation that programs like this inspire. You think of most multinationals that work for them, are kind of a small cog in a large wheel that, they have a specific task, they're in a specific department. There's not too much room for innovation or for flexibility, but that seems to be one of the things that holds big multinationals back, is that, for lack of a better word, not a conducive environment for innovation. But when you take an employee that has that experience and you plug them into an emerging market context with the local organization that has resource constraints, that have people in the office that are doing that wear multiple hats, those type of people by necessity have to think outside the box, have to stretch their dollars, much further than normal organizations that don't have to worry about funding for their programs, and that kind of an insight allows for creative problem solving, for innovative thinking, that then these employees can bring back to the organization and say, what, that product that we're launching, I think if we approach it this way, based off of my experience, could be a better solution for our organization. So looking at the ability to infuse that energy and inspiration from a program like this back into innovative methods for the sending company are manifold. And of course, last but not least, this is just a great branding strategy for an organization. You look at CSR departments around the world where they're trying to focus, and trying to drive conversation within their organizations on how do we engage with our local communities, how do we become leaders in the space, how do we become socially responsible as corporate citizens and global citizens. So the case, it makes itself when you're talking about these programs, because you're putting not only your money where your mouth is, but your most important asset, which are your employees. You're allowing them the opportunity to step away from their day-to-day jobs to engage in an immersive experience like this. It really shows the commitment that your organization has, and across the board, from public relations and goodwill development, to the local impact that you're having in these emerging markets is pretty powerful business case to have when looking to develop a pro bono program internationally. And I think over to Michelle from Dow.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Well, I'm very thankful to be part of this webinar because I am the program leader for the Dow Sustainability Corps, and it's quite unique because I am a dedicated resource to our program, whereas I know there are other companies who are just starting to begin their program like we did back in 2008, and then there was not a dedicated resource. But just to explain what our program is, the Dow Sustainability Corps is a skills-based employee engagement program that draws upon our employees' area of expertise to help solve some of the world's most pressing problems. And through Dow Sustainability Corps, what I do is I match interested, passionate, and capable employees with NGOs, social entrepreneurs, and government agencies that really need support for sustainable development projects, especially those in emerging geographies and areas of growth for Dow, our company. And then employees who take assignments as part of Dow's Sustainability Corps use their time, their professional skills, and knowledge to help improve the lives of people around the world. And I can tell you there are so many benefits, and I'll actually talk about that a little bit as well. One thing that I'm proud about with our program is now we also engage retirees because they're the ones that have extra time and they have such a valued skill set. So last year we brought this program and introduced it to retirees, and we deployed our first retiree at the end of last year. He was deployed to Ghana to help address the need for clean and affordable water. So we're quite proud of, expanding our program from a pilot program and a thought phase back in 2008 to where we are today. But I can tell you it does take a lot of thought. It takes some time. You don't develop an employee engagement program over time. You learn from others. You take on best practices and really learn by doing. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And here at Dow, we say it really is a holistic approach to volunteerism. Now, one thing with our program, too, we definitely rely on the skill sets of our employees, but sometimes when we engage in a Dow Sustainability Corps project, it involves product donations to that NGO or nonprofit and also philanthropy. So that's where we really get that holistic approach to volunteerism. Next slide, please. So how does it work? So we know that our employees are addressing a particular challenge based on their skill set, and then we at Dow also have what we call megatrends, and we have identified what we feel are really our core global challenges. And so with 54,000 employees globally, I know I can find any of the skill sets usually needed for a project, whether it's supply chain, IT, marketing, finance, and you can see on the screen just a few that I have listed there. And then when we look at the Dow megatrends, those megatrends really are the spaces where we are focusing business on, and that's agriculture. We have a business group called Dow Agrosciences, consumer and lifestyle, energy, infrastructure, and transportation. And then we at Dow looked at, okay, where do we feel we can best contribute our time and talents to address global challenges? And so when the nonprofits come to me with a project, I look at what challenge they're trying to address. And we like to stay in these categories: the water, the affordable housing, sustainable housing, education, especially STEM education, with us being, the Dow Chemical, agriculture, climate and environment, and public health and sanitation. And then with the Dow Sustainability Corps, we can deploy our employees for, 1 to several days, all the way to 3 to 4 months. We try not to have an employee work past 4 months because realistically our employees take on these projects in addition to their everyday role, and we really want to be able to tap into their resources again and don't want to make sure that they have too much on their plate, because at the end of the day we really do expect our employees to deliver results and sustainable solutions. The one thing that we have learned that we have quite a few employees that are very interested in our program, and we can't deploy everyone around the world. So we actually have been working with organizations like PYXERA Global, where our employees can perform virtually and then go to an emerging geography, or maybe they are on site at the NGO for a short amount of time, or they're actually combining both of these. I would say 90% of our projects, the employees working a little bit virtually and then going to the emerging geography for a week or two and then coming back and finishing up their project. Next slide, please. So I know, Daniel, you talked about the benefits, and I can't say enough about the benefits because there are all of these groups that you see listed here, the communities, the NGOs, the nonprofits, the governments, they're all benefiting in some sort of way, especially the communities, because part of our corporate citizenship and Dow 2015 sustainability goals all address the needs for the communities. And then this, of course, our projects are pro bono. We are not charging for this, and so, you know, these organizations receive the benefit of that. And then when you really talk about benefits, we really see the benefits that our employees are receiving, because when our employees are coming back, they really are motivated. We have higher spirit and morale, and they really feel good because they have had a life-changing experience while doing good. And with our program with PYXERA Global, we integrated the Dow Sustainability Core into Human Resources Talent Development Program to help these high-potential employees gain some leadership skills. And so we had 36 employees involved in a project. They were from 24 countries. They had 5 months of virtual consulting and then 1 week in Accra, Ghana, and this happened last fall. And out of that, we know that thousands of lives have been changed, including all of our own. And so really there are so many benefits to having your own skills-based employee engagement program. And so I know with Dow, last year we had 18 projects, about 71 employee volunteers, and over 8,000 volunteer hours contributed to those projects. And again, we are looking to expand our program for 2014. We are looking to collaborate with other companies like ourselves. And I don't know, maybe Daniel, maybe it was you that said it, but we know that we as the Dow Chemical Company can't solve the problems of the world all on our own. It takes all of us coming together to solve these challenges. So that's really what I had, and I thank you for allowing me to talk about it.
Great, thank you so much, Michelle, for that overview and for sharing with us a little bit more about the engagement that you've seen and the effects that engagement has had on your employees. They're great stories. So I think we have Daniel hopping back on the line now to run us through a little bit deeper dive into some other ICV programs.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks, Michelle, for sharing the Dow program. And to jump on that point that she was making, and then you'll see here over my next few remarks that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to these types of programs. Michelle talked about how they do a virtual component and then they spend some time in the ground. That's one approach. Other approaches here, these are some of the organizations that we work with. Take a 1-month approach where they'll send a team of 10 to 15 volunteers and engage with a couple of organizations in one geography. There's other models that are longer engagements and smaller teams. So there's really what is best for the organization, what are the priorities of the organization, where they want to focus that allow for the development of these programs. And if I could do a quick plug here, we have our 5th annual conference coming up in Washington, D.C., April 7th and 8th, Catalyzing Growth in Emerging Markets, where we're going to convene a lot of stakeholders in this space, a lot of implementing organizations, and lots of organizations that are interested in these types of programs to learn a little bit more about it, how to get a program off the ground, talk to people that have done it and people that are interested in it. So that's what we'll have coming up here in April. Moving to the next slide, I wanted to talk about 2 programs in specific that I think have been really successful and kind of show, how you can approach these types of programs. And one is, I think, the most robust and successful program that exists is the IBM Corporate Service Corps. They started this program with us back in 2008, so we're entering our 6th year with them. And you can see that they've invested a significant amount of time and energy in this program. 2,400 IBM employees from over 52 countries have been deployed. We've done over 800 projects in 34 of those countries with an in-kind value of $56 million. Those numbers are pretty impressive when you step back and think about it. And this is what IBM has really developed as a core offering for their high-performing talent pool. And you can see the triple benefits that they always espouse is the community impact. They're starting to get into secondary and tertiary cities in some emerging markets, so really getting out into the field. At the same time, helping to develop the leadership component of their employees, and then understanding, what is happening in those emerging markets and those growth markets for IBM. And you'll see here on the next slide, what this impact is. And one of the first questions we usually get from companies that are interested in doing this is saying, well, how are managers going to react to allowing us to, we're telling them that we're going to send their employees away for an extended period of time. How are they going to react? Well, IBM has done a great job in kind of capturing the impact of their corporate service corps program, and you can see here on this slide, on the left-hand side, those are managers of participants that have been deployed for an international corporate volunteer program. 92% say that they've witnessed and enriched cultural awareness in their employee. 78% have noticed an improved attitude and motivation in their direct reports' day-to-day work. 73% have noticed an enhanced leadership capacity developed in their employee. And those numbers are pretty staggering. There's not too many other development programs, at least that we know of, that have that high sustained value for this type of a proposition. And then you can see on the right-hand side, those are the results from individuals that have participated. It's almost 100% that they would recommend this to a colleague. 88% increase their ability to listen to the client needs, right? Because as I was talking before, it really forces people to step out of the box and think innovatively and creatively to problems. Next slide. And the other program that I wanted to mention was the Merck RTC Fellowship for World Health. This is a program that's entering its third year. We started with them in beginning of 2012, so entering into the third year here. And their approach is a little bit different than IBM's. They send out much smaller teams for longer engagements. And it's a fellowship program that usually it's a team of about 2 to 3 Merck employees that will spend time with an organization, helping them address the critical challenges that they face. If you can flip to the next slide. A lot of the initial thinking of how to go about this, a lot of organizations think, all right, geographically, what's the growth market for us? What is a country of interest to our business opportunities? Merck's taken a different kind of approach, and they said, all right, what organizations are doing work that for us we see as a critical challenge to global health? And what they've focused in on in their program are organizations that work with maternal health and child mortality issues. So the organizations are selected based on what they're actually doing as opposed to the location in which they're housed. And they've also aligned their program with other initiatives at Merck, specifically the Merck for Mothers program. It was started in 2011. Merck dedicated $500 million over the next decade to tackle specifically maternal and child mortality rates around the world, and they've focused on some key geographies and local partners too. The decision was made to align some of the fellows that we send out to work directly with those beneficiary organizations of Merck from others. So it's just even leveraging further the financial support that Merck is providing with the expertise of their own employee base pool. So it's a really cool collaboration between 2 distinct entities within Merck, on how they can address these global challenges together and as effectively as possible. And you'll see on the next slide, just to touch briefly on, when you're thinking about who to recruit, into these programs, there's different approaches you can take. Some limit it to a high potential pool. Another client that we work with is SAP, and they it's open to their global employee pool, but it's limited to their high potentials, which is about 2% of the population, so it's the top of the top that are allowed to the program. Merck allows any employee to apply to it, but then what they put into place is a rigorous application process of essays, questions, and then a couple rounds of interviews before they're even selected. And then they'll take a look at, not only the high-performing employees that come through the application, but people that have been kind of tapped on the shoulder as the next leaders for the organization, their enthusiasm and motivation about this opportunity. And those people tend to typically be in their mid-careers, 1 or 2 rungs below the executive C-suite level, but are kind of touted as the next wave of leaders for the organization. And then just to touch briefly on, what sample skill sets mean. Sorry, just for one more second on this slide here. When thinking about different types of projects, there's really not a need to think super in-depth about what type of projects to engage with, right off the outset. That can come at a later time. You really want to tap the entire employee population pool that you can at your organization, because everyone has something to offer. These are skills-based volunteer opportunities, and you want them to be able to leverage those skills that they've developed as professionals. So you can think of organizational development, marketing, communications, finance, even more technical capacities like medicinal chemistry, lab experience in the Merck context. To think of, there's no limit or no restrictions to the type of skill sets that host organizations are looking for around the world. It really is open, and it's one of the benefits of partnering up with an organization like PYXERA Global is we have that expertise and network to tap into available organizations and hot markets that are looking for these types of ICV engagements worldwide. So jumping to the next slide here, to think at a strategic level, 4 considerations when wanting to take pro bono programs globally. And I'll touch on these on subsequent slides here, but it's plan ahead, be flexible, leverage expertise of social sector partners like PYXERA Global, prioritize volunteer safety. As you can imagine, that's the #1 priority in any of these types of programs. And then as your program matures, thinking to a long-term sustainability strategy for your program. So when you think about plan ahead and be flexible, I know that seems kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many bumps and challenges come across the way. I'm in the middle right now of setting up a program in Nairobi, Kenya, that the team will be arriving in a couple of weeks, and one of my local partners just pulled out saying that they unfortunately couldn't take on a team for various reasons, which was unfortunate, but thankfully to planning ahead, I have a few other organizations that I was able to reach out to quickly and explain the situation and have them be able to accept the team. And we've adapted the scope of work a little bit, but I think we'll be able to fit them in really well. And then thinking of this dynamism, from a strategic level, I'm already working with some of our clients into 2015 about different types of geographies to send their organizations, to their employees to, the types of organizations to think of. So, when your program starts to grow, is to think about it, at a long-term horizon, and especially if you have an employee evaluation cycle, right, where each new year you get a new crop of high-performing employees. If that's the audience you're going to limit these engagements to, you can plan that accordingly about when the teams will deploy based on that cycle. And also, too, for the corporation and the leadership to be flexible, that the situations change. We had slated to send some fellows to Bangladesh here in June, but given the political unrest in the country, we've had to disengage from that commitment because, it just wasn't viable to have a group of fellows there during this unrest in that particular country. So planning ahead and being flexible is very important. Next slide. So from a corporation's perspective, there's not too many institutions that have that infrastructure, that expertise in emerging markets with local nonprofits, with social sector, social enterprise organizations. To say, all right, this is an organization we want to work with. this is a project we want to do, this is how we're going to deploy logistically. And that's why I think working with an organization like PYXERA Global, to help you think of these strategies, think of how do you get this up and off the ground, I think is a really value add to this type of a proposition. And since we're a nonprofit, I think it makes it very economical and affordable to work with us to help you build out these programs. You can see about 85% of international corporate volunteer programs that we know of are run through partners like ourselves. Next slide. And it's not too often you see 100% on anything, but this one is there. It's the safety and security. So when you think about where to deploy teams, what markets you're going to send them to, safety and security is first and foremost, the priority for any engagement. And this cuts across the various different things. It's not just if someone falls ill, what do you have planned? Or if someone breaks a leg, what do you have planned? But also, like I was mentioning before, what is the political climate? What's the social-economic climate in the particular region or city that you're thinking about? What are some things in place? And of course, this is a world that's not black and white. There's lots of gray areas, and this is what we help companies think about and walk through is deployments to countries like Nigeria, for example, or Bangladesh, or you see the current news in Ukraine right now, in Thailand, Venezuela, things like countries where there is some political unrest and decisions need to be made. What is the safety security of cities like that, of countries like that? Working with the security partners at the multinationals. So with Merck, for example, we're in continuous touch with their security team, assessing situations on the ground, making those decisions on, is it safe to deploy? And then when we do deploy, making sure that there's emergency procedures in place to get any evacuations or help out to the field as needed. And fourth, and to finish here, my part is, as these programs grow and as you start thinking, even at a beginning stage, of long-term sustainability, an impact. One of the laments that we receive a lot for programs like this is, wow, what a great experience, but it was just a one-time engagement, right? We just sent one team there, they engaged once, which is excellent. But what's the follow-up? What are we going to do, to follow up this type of experience? So as programs grow and mature, is really developing a strategy for sustainable engagement to not only a specific geography, but to to an organization. What type of a commitment can be made? Can projects be built over 2 teams, over 3 teams, right? Different deployments where you can get a more in-depth project on the ground, and building on those the core business capabilities, right, and the CSR objectives that you have as an organization. All of these things should be taken into consideration. And then as well too, when I was mentioning before developing projects, you can do a lot of pre-work with how to develop a business strategy, how to implement an HR infrastructure. All those things are transferable cross borders. But to really get an impact and a sustainable plan, it has to develop a local context, a local flavor to that. And that's what multiple teams, when you think of a sustainability plan, can really deliver, is contextualizing that to each specific market.
Great, thanks, Daniel. And I think we're just going to hand it back over to Vicky for a few more minutes to kind of wrap up her final thoughts on what you should keep in mind and what those top considerations are for going global.
Thanks. And I think really I'm just going to be reiterating what Daniel said and those 4 considerations, which were, I think, really great. We've said flexibility quite a few times, but I think that is definitely one of the keys to your success. Really listening to the folks that you're engaging with, both the volunteers, whether it's for something specific like ICV or just for your program in general. Really think about and listen to what's going to motivate your employees to make sure that you're getting the most success out of your program. Leveraging your local relationships and partnerships, these are things that you're doing already domestically. It's the same thing globally. So making sure that you're incorporating those same strategies globally just, it's just focusing it into the locations where you're thinking about growing. And then, VolunteerMatch likes to say over and over again to make sure that you're kind of assessing your program and evolving it and doing that again and again to make sure that your program is evolving and continuing to grow and reflect your corporate culture as it changes through the years. So just like all of your other departments within your company and your businesses are, constantly reflecting on what's worked and what didn't work and how to sort of make small or big changes to make sure that it can grow and be even more successful. You should be doing that with your employee engagement program, and certainly, if it's new for you to be broadening it to sort of a more global audience, then that'll be really key to make sure that that flexibility is built in, and also the ability to quickly change things. Michelle mentioned that they learned a lot by doing, so certainly you're going to be learning a ton as you start to roll out these programs, but you also need the flexibility to change things so that you can make it as successful as possible.
Great. Thanks, Vicki. So as we mentioned at the beginning, we have a few minutes now for some Q&A with our presenters. So we have a few of your questions already queued up, ready to go, but you can continue to be submitting them, again, through the panel on the right side of your screen, or also through Twitter to @VM_solutions using the hashtag VMBPN. Okay, so, excuse me. First question that we actually got from the audience, which I actually think is a really great question and something I hadn't really thought about. So what they're asking is how, or what, I guess, and how are companies vetting their employees that they're sending internationally? So kind of the first half of that is, what are they vetting? Obviously they're going to be looking at skill sets, but are they also vetting, other maybe more demographic, things about the employee, or how they would fit in the organization's culture that they're going, to help with, or kind of what are they vetting, and then how are they vetting that? So I don't know if maybe Daniel, you want to get started with what you've seen at PYXERA in your work with your clients, and then maybe Michelle, if you want to chime in with maybe how Dow is vetting your employees.
Sure, that sounds good. Yeah, so there's many different approaches you can take, but one of the things that we've found to be extremely valuable in engagements like this is not only thinking of the diversity of the geographies that you send to, and thinking of emerging markets and different types of organizations, but it's the diversity of the team that you're sending. I'm sure that a team of 12 Americans would do a great job in an emerging market and working with the local organizations there. But the depth of the experience and the cross-cultural sharing that you'll get if you have 9 countries represented, for example, and you have a good gender balance and you have a different experience balance, I think those are some of the things in the feedback surveys that we receive, is how beneficial that was, and an unexpected benefit to a lot of the participants is to have a colleague of theirs that's on the other side of the world, works for the same company, but they do things differently, not only culturally, but business-wise too as well. So those types of learnings are extremely valuable for engagements like this. So absolutely think of, if you do have a multinational company, to diversify the employees that are on assignments like this. At the same time, I think implementing an application process of some sort to vet, there's some people that will look at an experience like this and say, oh, I just need time away from the office, or I need to get away from my client. Those aren't really the types of motivating factors you're looking for in employees that are, for an engagement like this. You're looking for someone that either volunteers at home or volunteers in the community or in their church group, that really sees the value of doing something like this. And you can extract those insights from essay questions as simple as, why do you want to be part of this program? That's a standard question that lots of our clients implement. And that can really give you a good sense of, the person's motivation for applying. So I think if you can keep in mind a diverse pool of employees to send out, and then vet their motivations for applying, I think you're going to be in a pretty good position to have a successful team.
Great, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I don't know why, I just hadn't even ever thought about, that obviously the motivation for them to go would be a big piece of, how impactful or effective they're going to be while they're there. So that's a really great point. So Michelle, I wonder if you could share maybe a little bit about how Dow specifically vets for the employees that you send.
Absolutely, and one thing with our program is we don't want to exclude anyone from applying, so we have a self-nomination tool that's an online tool that all employees who are interested in being considered for a project can go into this tool and give us their name, their skill set, their area of interest, and so on and so forth. And so I have that list that I can pull from. And then I also work with our business leaders across the globe and our human resources leaders in case they have certain employees that they want to engage in the Dow Sustainability Corps. Maybe they want to enhance that employee's leadership skills. Maybe they are classified as high potentials and we want to put them through the talent development program. So that's a different area where we work to find employees for the program, because it's not like we have maybe like some of the other companies like IBM where we don't have that pool built up yet because we are so new. But one thing that I will say, I will take and work with an employee who has a passion for this kind of work, because realistically it is not always easy. It is above and beyond their everyday role. And they, again, as I said before, they are expected to deliver results. So I think, as Daniel said, some people just want to get out of the office and go on this fun little trip across the globe and learn about the culture. That's not really the kind of person we want. We want the person who has a skill set that wants to make a difference and really use their talents to find a solution for projects. And so that if we can, let's say we have a project in Colombia, if we can, we like to engage the regional employees in the project. It's not always possible. Especially in Africa, we don't have a lot of offices there, so we don't have a lot of employees to pull from, so we will send them from North America over. But one thing that I really found that makes a successful project team for Dow is when I have a project leader, and our teams are much smaller, in two to 4 rather than 10 to 20. When I have a project leader, and then I have a senior manager or leader who can serve as a mentor, because they have many years of experience with Dow. And then I also find a new hire to put this team of 3 together, because I think they all learn from each other, and especially the new hires, we're really finding the Dow Sustainability Corps is attractive to the new hires because they are so willing to help solve, the world's most pressing problems. So that's a little bit of our angle.
No, that's really cool. I think it's, I love that you include, obviously keeping the program all-inclusive and allowing everybody to apply, but I love the concept of kind of putting together newer employees with maybe more seasoned employees because of that, ability to learn from each other and to really get the newer employees really excited about Dow and committed to, your mission as a company. I think that's a really, really interesting and cool approach.
And I work very closely with workforce planning, and one thing that we do say, we do like the employee to be here at least 2 years with Dow in order for them to be a project lead, because they really need to know about the company and the internal resources to help them be successful on the project. But so, there's a variety of people within Dow that we work with to find the right employee to deploy.
Great. No, thank you so much, Michelle. I actually have one more question for you that came in. So, I know that Vicky mentioned again that you had said that you learned a lot from doing whenever it came to launching and running these programs. So I'm wondering if there are any lessons that you've learned from your global volunteering and ICV programs that you've then kind of applied to your general employee engagement programs.
Yes, you definitely need, if you have never engaged in skills-based program before, you definitely want to pair yourself with an organization that has. Especially when we tackled the talent development piece, it was called our Leadership in Action. again, we're kind of unique because I can run some of our programs, but for a larger program with up to 40 employees, we definitely needed the help of PYXERA Global because they had the boots on the ground people in Ghana, and they also knew the area and the NGOs much more than we did. So you really need to partner yourself with an organization that's experienced, and then you also need to really have kind of a defined program when I think Daniel mentioned this, when it comes to safety and kind of those learning modules, you really want to have those modules so that you can educate your employee before they go overseas, especially when it comes to culture, safety, and security, and just knowing how they conduct business in emerging geographies. Many times it's not even close to how we do here in North America.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the, one of the big things that I always think about as well is kind of are those cultural differences really in what, different cultures view as volunteerism and what isn't, what other countries view as the role of business in society versus, how we view it. So that's something that, I definitely think is really important to keep in mind. So the next question I'd like to pose to both Daniel and Vicky. So this one also came in from somebody in the audience. We have lots of great questions coming in, by the way. You guys are an awesome audience. So the question is, and I think that this is a really important thing to think about, so how do companies, maybe, in the experience, Daniel, with PYXERA and Vicky, in working with our clients here at VolunteerMatch, how do you see companies balancing kind of this, these the ICV programs, the highly skilled, the pro bono, kind of more intensive engagements with, your more kind of overarching general employee volunteer program so that, you're still being inclusive of all employees and, their capabilities and their, the time that they have to dedicate to this without kind of letting one slip. So I don't know if, Daniel, you want to start, and then Vicky?
Sure. Yeah, that is a great question, and I think to take into consideration when thinking these programs. But I think if you take a step-by-step approach to developing, you can't build an entire robust offering for every single one of your employees right away. So I think if you can build on it, if you can build a kind of a core program that has these offerings, and then what you're able to do is expand and offer different types of opportunities. So, for example, one of our clients that has a robust ICV program is facing just that. There's lots of employees that, for either a personal or professional reason, can't deploy for a month, to an emerging market and work. So I'm working with them to set up domestic volunteer programs where they can engage with the local communities where they live, and with the organizations that are based there, where they can do some virtual consulting and work, and then maybe go spend 2 or 3 days at that organization's office to help implement or execute whatever the scope was that was developed. So I think if you try to bite off more than you can chew, you probably won't be able to swallow everything. So take it a piecemeal approach, see what's most effective. Speak with your executive leadership. What are going to be the programs that are most effective? Maybe you can even reverse it and start domestically with skills-based volunteer programs and then move internationally. I think those are different approaches to take. But I think the underlying answer to that question is that what companies are realizing is the value of skills-based volunteer work. Traditional volunteer work is excellent and is very beneficial. But when you can leverage professional skills and help them and help organizations that don't have the resources or capacity to develop a business plan. There are local nonprofits that do need a strategy plan. They do need an HR infrastructure. They do need to be able to communicate outwards to donors and to funding, but they might not have the skills and expertise in-house. So that's what these programs are able to do, regardless of the context, if it's an international engagement or domestic. If companies can focus on how do you leverage the skills in your employee base, then I think you're moving in the right direction.
Great, thanks, Daniel. And Vicky, do you have a...
Just a quick addition. I think that that's exactly right what Daniel was saying. It's, my hunch is that for at least the companies we're working with, you already have either the beginnings or, sort of a well-established employee engagement program with volunteering, with philanthropy, and those sorts of things. And ICV is certainly a great component of that. But, you should really be thinking, again, holistically about your program. What are the key components to your program, the communication, the senior management buy-in, the nonprofit partnerships. And VolunteerMatch has sort of our theory on what those key components are, and then you start to layer in, are you at the beginning stages of your program? How do you have elements domestically and internationally that relate to each component, and sort of how do you build out that sort of matrix and full-fledged holistic program that that will apply and balance, the skills-based and the other elements, days of service, team building events, things that are still key to the success of your program.
Definitely. Thanks, Vicky. So one last question. I know that we're I want to be sensitive of everybody's time, but I just want to go around the room really quickly and have everybody just kind of give, because I know we've got a lot of questions that are coming about, I'm just starting out, how do I start? What's the first thing I should do? So, in a sentence or two, if we can kind of go around the room, maybe start with Vicky, what's the first thing that somebody should think about if they're trying to either launch a brand new program internationally or kind of expand a domestic program into an international program?
The first thing you should do is reach out to a program that you admire or that you've learned about and talk to them. Talk to the program manager, see what their perspective is, start to sort of build out your own network of folks who can help you think about things, and then you can take it in-house and apply it to your own corporate culture.
Great. Michelle, do you have one thing that you would tell somebody who is just starting out?
I would say do your homework, very similar to what you just heard, but before you even begin to put your program together, do your homework, research what other companies have done, and learn from their successes and their failures, because you will then be 900% smarter by learning from what we have done wrong in the past so that you can create success for the future.
That's great. And then next, Daniel, to sum us up, what's your one thing you would tell somebody?
Well, besides attending our conference April 7th and 8th, I think
that's a good one, though, Daniel.
Where you'll be able to learn, all about these types of engagements. I think if you focus on, what's your organization's biggest opportunity, or what's your biggest pain point? Are you struggling with brand? Are you struggling with employee retention? Are you struggling with leadership development? Where this type of an opportunity can pivot on those pain points. And I think that's an easy sell to executives. Say, what, we have a real problem hiring millennials. There's no one that's coming out of college that we're able to bring onto our organization. What if we develop a volunteer engagement, for new hires, or if the leadership bench is shallow in the organization, what if we develop a volunteer program that can help leadership development in our organization? I think by thinking strategically like that, you'll be in a good position to at least start the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. So unfortunately, it looks like we're just about out of time. So to quickly just kind of sum us up here at the end, just to remind everybody that there are other ways that you can stay up to date with VolunteerMatch and the world of CSR. You can follow us on our blog at volunteeringofcsr.org. Follow us on Twitter at VM_solutions, and sign up for our monthly Good Companies newsletter, which you can sign up for on our blog as well. And interestingly enough, that last question, I didn't even think about it before, leads nicely into our save the date for our next webinar. So on March 19th, we're going to be joined by some serious superstars from a few companies that we work with. We'll be joined by NetSuite, ADT, Prometheus Real Estate Group, and JetBlue to be talking about lessons from the field. So employee volunteer managers' top tips for success. So what those one things, the one thing that they would tell somebody who was just starting out managing an employee volunteer program or taking over one that's already existing. So make sure you sign up for that one. And with that, I just want to say thank you everybody on the call. Really engaged audience, really amazing questions. Sorry if we didn't get to yours. We'll do our best to follow up afterwards. And thank you so much to our speakers, to Daniel, Michelle, and Vicky for a wonderful, wonderful call and really interesting conversation. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you in March.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.